Hi guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to another video tutorial on creating an ASP.NET Core 2.2 web application with Angular 7. In the last video tutorial, we created a service that will validate JWT, that's JSON Web Tokens, that would be sent attached to the header by our client when they want to authenticate themselves to log into our application. Now we need to have a method where we will be logging in the users and sending them these tokens so that whenever they want to view any of other views in our application like products or other services they which need authentication and authorization, they would have to provide the server with this token. Now to create and send these tokens, we would go ahead and create another HTTP post method, and we will call this method as login. So let's do that. So method has been created. I have called this method as login, and now we would need some properties, that some parameters in our method that we will receive when the user submits the login form. So we are going to bind that properties to our login view model. So let's go ahead and create an object of login view model, and we'll bind the data that we receive from our form that was submitted into this model. And we have to make sure we tell the API that the values are going to come from the body of the request. Now we have created the parameters that are required. Now the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and start coding this method. So first thing that we want to do is in our form data, we will receive the username and password. So when we receive the username, we would want to go ahead and get the user with that specific username from our database. And to do that, we will create an object that will go and get the user with that specific username from the database and store it in this variable. So we are going to use an await operator because it's an asynchronous request, and we're going to use our user manager object using dependency injection. We are going to find the user by his name asynchronously. So we'll use this method, and then within this method parameters we will specify the username, which is provided under form data dot username. So now this query will run and it will go and get the user and store the result in this variable called as user. Next thing that we want to do is we want to check if the result succeeded, did it find a user, or it returned null, or there was an error, whether the username or the password was invalid, so on. So we will now validate the result over here. So let's add an if condition over here, and within the if condition we will say if user not equal to null, that means if you found some user, and also we'll make sure that the password was valid. So if score user manager dot check password async method and supply the password to validate. So user, and from form data dot password, the password that was entered in the form. Now what we want to do is within this method we want to go ahead and write our condition. We are getting this error because we are asynchronously trying to get the result, and therefore we need to use an await key operator over here. And now let's go ahead and check if the result was true. So this code inside this if condition will execute. If it was false, if this result was false, the user was null, or the password did not match, then we are going to return an error back to the user. So we'll just say return error. So the error would look something like this, where we will send an unauthorized response back to the client, and we will send a message saying please check the login credentials, invalid username or password is entered. And we will also add the model state dot add model error saying username password was not found. So now let's go ahead and start coding this condition. If the condition was true, we would need to generate a token and then send it back to the client who is requesting to log in. Now, to generate the token, first thing that we need to do is we would need the values from our app settings.json file so that we can add it to the token description. So if you know that when we created the service, I mentioned that we need to validate each token that is sent in with the request, and we'll validate the token based on the options that we have provided in the app settings.json file. Similarly, when we are creating the token, we also need to add these values to the token. So anytime a user sends this token back to us, so that we can verify those values and then allow them to access the resources on our website. So now the first thing that we want to do is using dependency injection. We will go ahead and get the values from our app settings.json file, since we already have a service that is one configured to provide us those values from our app settings class, and that was created here, services configure app settings, from the app settings section. So now let's use this service through dependency injection. So let's go ahead and create an object of type app settings and then add the missing reference. Next thing that we want to do is initialize this object. Okay, now just to let you guys know that Microsoft recommends and has advised developers to use an interface to access the values from the class. Directly do not access the values from the class, but use an interface when you want to access the values. And the interface is called as iOptions. And using iOptions interface, we can access those values. So let's first add the missing reference. And now let's initialize it. So our app settings, let's go app setting is equal to app settings. We are going to get an error here because now we are using an interface. Therefore, using the interface, what we can access is the value. So we have to specify the dot value property here for the interface, and that should be it. Now anytime when we want to access the values like the secret, the audience, the issuer, we can do that by just calling this object underscore app settings in our account controller class. Now let's go ahead and start working on generating the token. Since we know that the result returned true, the first thing that we want to verify is that the applicant's email is confirmed. And since we have not yet set up our email server with SendGrid, which will send these confirmation emails to the users, for now, confirmation of email, we'll just put it on a hold, and we will do it in the next video tutorial where we will just dedicate it for email confirmation process. Now let's go ahead and do the next step. So let's say the email was confirmed. The next step is to generate the token. So let's go ahead and generate a JWT token. Now to generate the token, the first thing that we want to do here is create an object of type token handler, that is JWT security token handler. And let's first add the missing reference. And now we will use this object, that's the token handler, to create the description for our token. What I mean by description is a token will have some properties like the secret, the issuer, the audience, and the time when the token will expire. So we need to add these values inside a token descriptor object and then create a subject and add it to the claims identity. The way we will do that is we will create a object and call it variable of type token descriptor, and it's an object of type security token descriptor. Now what we want to do is first thing add the missing reference, that is using Microsoft.identityModel.tokens. And now what we want to do is inside our token descriptor, we need to describe our token. So we need to tell when this token is going to expire, and we need to tell when this token was, who's the issuer, and the other values we need to describe it over here. Now inside the token descriptor, the first thing that we want to do is register some claims for our JWT. We can use these claims in order to verify or validate the users based on our requirements. For example, we will create a claim for the user when he logs in the token saying the user's role is admin. And then when the user wants to access the products page and wants to edit it, then we will verify this token and see if the token contains a claim where it specifies that the user's role is admin. If the token doesn't contain a claim where the user's role is admin, then we are just going to unauthorize the user from viewing that page. Therefore, claims works as a part of JWT authentication. And in order to add claims when the user logs in into the JWT token, we need to create a property called as subject. And inside the subject property, we are going to add all the claims associated with the token. So first thing that we want to do is create an object, new object of claims identity. And inside the claims identity, we want to make sure that we create an array of claims, because we would have many claims inside the claims identity, like the user's role, the user's ID, the username, the token ID itself, when the token is going to expire, and so on. So every token will have a unique ID so that we cannot reuse the token again to prevent unauthorized access. So now the next thing that we want to do is add the claims inside this claim array. So I will add 3 claims. So the first claim here is for the sub, which will hold the user's identity. The second claim here is the JTI claim, which is basically a unique identifier for our Json Web Token. As I mentioned, we want to use it only one time to prevent token replay. And the third is for the user's ID. Now, we also want to create a claim for the user's role, since our application has role-based authorization like admin and customer. So we want to first go ahead and get the user's role. So let's create an object here, call it roles. And let's go ahead using our user manager, get the user's role. So to get the user's role, we will use the user manager.getRoles async. And now we will create a new claim here to get the role types. So let's create a new claim and use the claim types dot role property. And then what we want to do is get the roles object over here dot first or default. The reason we are using first or default is because one user can have multiple roles. So therefore we will use first or default here, and we are getting this error here because we're using an asynchronous method. So we have to await for the result. And now this should be it. Now we can also add, you can also add multiple claims away. You can add any claims that you want to validate for a user. So let's go ahead and add few more claims. Add one more claim. The claim when the user logged in, it will register the date and the time when the user logged in. Now I think that should be it for the claims, and as I told you, you can add more claims if you want to. Now let's add the issuer, the audience when the token expires, and the sign in, that's the key for our token. So to do that, for the key we will use the sign in credentials to sign the token, and we will create a new sign in credential object. And now here we need to specify the key that we want to use to sign the token, and the key will come from our key object. So let's go ahead and create a key object here that we can use to sign our token, since we want to encode this key and then sign it onto the token. So let's create a key object, and now create a new symmetric security key. If you don't see this, if you get an error, just add the missing reference. And inside the symmetric security key, we want to encode our key. So we will use the encoding class, which is under system.text, and then call the ASCII2, and then encode our key using get bytes. So now the key is in our app settings.json file, and we have created an object using the interface options to access the values of app settings.json. So we can just do underscore app settings.secret to access the value of our secret key. Now what we want to do here is pass this key, and now we want to specify what type of encoding algorithm we want to use. So security algorithms, so security algorithms dot, there are so many algorithms available here, but this is one of the recommended one, which is the 256 bit signature. You can do this as per your requirement. Some people use 64 as well, so I don't know, if you feel that is what you require, you can do that. So it's just to encrypt your key. So now what we want to do is go ahead and create the issuer for our token, add the issuer value. So it is underscore app settings dot the site, and now we also want the audience to have audience. Okay guys, one more thing very important to note here is, let's say our audience also is our app settings dot, do we have audience? Yes, I've created a value for audience. Now the thing that I was mentioning is, let's say you forgot to add the token expiry time here, okay, in your token, then it's going to give you an error, because here you are trying to validate the token, the expiry time when the token is going to expire. And if you have not specified a token expiry time, or if you have not specified an issuer, or if not specified an audience in the token here, but then you're trying to validate it, you will get an error. So whatever you want to validate in your validation service, that needs to be there in your token, so you need to add it here. So expires equals to date time dot UTC now dot, and since we want to add the time in minutes, 60 minutes. So we are going to add the time in minutes just to make sure that we are on the same page. This app settings dot option here 60, I want to add it in minutes, not in hours, otherwise the token will stay active for 60 hours. I want the token to expire after 60 minutes, that's 1 hour. So that's what I'm going to use here. So let's create a variable here that will convert this string token expiry time is equal to underscore app settings dot the expiry time, and actually this should be double since I want to convert it. It's time, and now I'm going to convert dot to double. So time cannot be in string, it has to be double. So I've converted the value from our app settings.json, which is string, to double. And now this token expiry time, I can put it over here, and I can just remove semicolon. Every time I make that mistake, it should be a comma. Okay, so now that's it. Now we have described whatever details we want to add to our token in our token descriptor object. Now we have not yet generated the token, so let's go ahead and create the token. So create the token, call it token, and using our token handler object, we will create token, call the create token method. And inside the create token method, we need to specify the description of a token, and we have already created an object for that which contains all the descriptions, so we're just going to pass it there. And finally, what we want to do is return this token back to the user with an OK response. Also, you will see tutorials where many people have actually created a separate method to generate this token, and then they have used that method inside their login, which is actually the good way of coding or designing your method. But in this case, since this is not a very big project, I have added this method to create token inside my login method itself. I have not created different methods for that. So usually people create a method called as generate token, and then they use it inside their login, but I have not done that. You can go ahead and do that, but I don't think we need it for this small project. So now what we want to do is new. We want to send the OK result and some response. So what response we're going to send? We're going to send token is equal to token handler dot, we are going to write the token, called the write token method, and which token we want to write, it's this token here. Next thing, we also want to send the expiration time of the token. So token dot valid to property will give us the expiration time of the token. And we also want to send the username. So username is equal to user object dot the username. And we also need to send the user role as well. So we will, what's the role of the user? So roles dot first or default. And I think that's enough information that we are sending back to the client, and we don't need to send anything else. Also, now if there is an error, this option here will execute and he will receive an error instead of an OK response. So that should be it for our login method. And now in the next video tutorial, we will test both these methods using Postman API, Postman application. We'll check. So go ahead and download the Postman application, and inside Postman we will be testing these APIs to make sure that these APIs are working fine. I'll put the link in the video description to download Postman, but you can also Google download Postman, and you should find the link to download it. It's a free application. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe my channel Tech Howdy.